All right. Hi, for everyone that's watching. My name is Jean Marie Lawrence. I am a disability activist in Chattanooga. I'm also a person with a disability myself. Um, I use a wheelchair full time, and I care very much about the city of Chattanooga and Chattanoogans with disabilities and what we're going to see in the future as a new administration approaches and takes shape. And so I was approached by Monty Bruell. Monty, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
Perfect.
To really get a dialogue going, and I'm grateful because I say time and again that the disability community is the largest minority community in the country, and we're a huge asset to politicians, and getting our vote is very important. But very few politicians take the time to focus on disability issues and disability rights in their platform and in their campaign. So I'm very grateful that Monty has taken the time to step in to the hot seat and answer uncomfortable questions about issues that are not always at the forefront of city government, but necessary.
Well, thank you, Jean Marie. I'm Monty Bruell, and I am a candidate for mayor, and I would love to have your support and your vote, certainly. I am a native Chattanoogan. I grew up in Alton Park and East Chattanooga in City View Apartments, just up the hill from Memorial Hospital. The number one reason that I want to be mayor is to address the huge disparities that exist in Chattanooga. And I think accessibility is one of those areas where we should offer more resources. We should give it more attention because it's important. I say that I want to be the mayor for every single person who lives in Chattanooga, and I need to make sure that I am engaging with and listening to people with disabilities, and I'm just happy to have this opportunity. So with that, I will just turn it over to Jean Marie, and feel free to ask me anything you'd like.
All right, thank you. So I've just got 4 questions here that are fairly well-rounded for concerns in the disability community. And I'll just start off with the first one. So Chattanooga obviously is an entrepreneurial epicenter. New businesses are constantly popping up, which is fantastic. However, they are rarely ADA compliant from the get-go. And the only way to currently address that is to talk face-to-face with the business managers and owners and hope that they take that concern seriously and do something about it, or to sue them, which is how a lot of ADA concerns are addressed. My question, though, is if elected mayor, would you commit to requiring businesses to meet ADA standards before becoming operational, much in the same way that health and safety checks are required? And I ask this because not only would this help consumers with disabilities, but it's also financially advantageous for business owners because it prevents the excessive cost of lawsuits later on.
Well, I think the very first thing that I should do as mayor is to do an audit of the city's own buildings and the city's own facilities. Because if I'm going to uh, make a requirement of other people, of other organizations, I don't want to be a hypocrite by being the mayor of a city that isn't itself fully compliant with ADA regulations. And cities and governments are, by law, required to be ADA compliant. So I would first make sure that Chattanooga city government was compliant. Next, I've been involved in the startup community for at least the last 10 years or so. And most of the time, when businesses are just getting started, they do not own the facilities that they're in. Most new businesses are renters. So the issue really becomes one of what are we going to do with landlords, and how are we going to get landlords to make their buildings ADA compliant. Uh, City law can't supersede federal law. And so the federal law in the ADA says that if you are an employer with more than 15 employees, you must be ADA compliant. And if your business derives most of its business from the public use. So a hotel, for example, you couldn't open a hotel without that being ADA compliant. So those are two things that are covered by law. So I don't think as the city mayor that I could make a requirement that would be different from the federal law. However, I think there are a couple of things that I could do. The first is I could find a way to incentivize landlords and new business owners to be ADA compliant. That may mean giving some tax break if they are willing to make the investment to become compliant. The other thing that I can do is offer a free audit. I think that when city inspectors go out to inspect for other building codes, it would be a very easy add-on for us to say, well, you need to do these other things to be fully ADA compliant, and we could provide them with a list of benefits for doing that. So I think that's how I would address the issue of startup businesses and working with landlords to get them to be fully ADA compliant.
Wonderful. Thank you. Um, so going on with that, um, something that many candidates have talked about is the need to invest in our infrastructure. Clearly, city infrastructure is important. But in the past and presently, accessibility is not always part of the conversation from the beginning, which has resulted in a persistent lack of access. What specifically would you do to ensure that accessibility and inclusion are included in your plan for the city's infrastructure and the jobs that come with it?
I've commented many times about our regional planning commission. The way it's set up is that the county mayor appoints half of the commissioners and the city mayor appoints the other half. Right now, I think that the Regional Planning Commission has too many developers on it. And I have publicly said this, I've said this at a Regional Planning Commission meeting, that I think that the RPC sometimes adopts regulations to make things easy on themselves. When you have so many developers making the regulations, it's kind of like the foxes guarding the hen house. So I would make a move to appoint non-developers to the Regional Planning Commission. Now, make no mistake, I am pro-development. Chattanooga needs to grow, and we need to have development, but we need to have smart development. We need to have development that works for everybody. So I think it would be certainly a great thing to appoint someone to represent the disability community as a member of the Regional Planning Commission. Uh, it also would be great if we had an employee inside the Regional Planning Agency, which is the agency that designs most of the regulations adopted by the Planning Commission. Now, I haven't studied this. I don't know whether there are people with disabilities at RPA now. I mean, it could be that is the case. I simply don't know. But my commitment would be to look for opportunities to hire staff at RPA who were members of the disability community, so that point of view would always be represented. In terms of the larger infrastructure question, sidewalks are a big component of infrastructure. And right now, we don't require developers to build sidewalks. So I think that's just a very basic thing, that as we renew our infrastructure, as we add infrastructure, accessibility should be one of those key things that we look at, because it really is easy to do it at the beginning. If we do it right the first time, we don't have to go back and correct any omissions that might be made. So I think we've got to change the way we look at new development and make sure that accessibility is one of the things that we're scoring.
Wonderful, thank you. I agree. I think that Chattanooga, I came here in 2004, and Chattanooga has grown so much even since then. But there's always more that we can do. And having people in our city government who understand that getting it right in the beginning, instead of having to backpedal and fix things later on, really is the best way to go. So thank you. So my third question has to do with housing. I know this is something that all candidates have talked extensively about as well. Lack of affordable and accessible housing continues to be a significant impediment to people with disabilities and their families achieving economic security. For myself, I live downtown because I work downtown, because that makes it easier for me to access the resources that I use. But living downtown is expensive, especially when you add on the fact that I'm in a wheelchair and have a much more limited availability of options in terms of housing. So my question there is, what changes do you plan to implement that would remedy the affordable and accessible housing issues in Chattanooga?
As it stands today, we have a shortage of affordable housing units of all kinds in Chattanooga. On one hand, this is a problem because we don't have enough units, but it's also an opportunity because we need to build more units. And as we build more units, we need to make sure that we're building accessible units, and we're building units that are fully ADA compliant. So the bad news is we don't have the inventory that we need, but the good news is that as mayor, I'm going to be committed to building even more inventory than we have. And as I said before, there's an opportunity to do it right the first time. There's the old carpentry adage, measure twice, cut once. And I think the same applies to design. Let's get the design right, and then we don't have to worry about it down the road.
Thank you. Housing is certainly one of the biggest challenges that people with disabilities face, because even when we have the money to afford accessible housing simply doesn't exist in many cases. So I certainly look forward to that. My last question is probably quite a bit easier than the rest of the questions that I've thrown at you today. And it's simply, we do have an Office of Multicultural Affairs, which I myself have been proud to be an intern in the past. And I think that office is an amazing resource for the city, and does great things. If elected, would you commit to establishing a position within the Office of Multicultural Affairs that focuses specifically on disability issues? And would you commit to hiring a qualified person with a disability for that role if a candidate applies?
Well, over the course of the last several weeks, there have been a few things that have been pointed out to me. In meeting with Chattanooga's Latinx community, it's been pointed out to me that we don't really have an Office of Immigrant Affairs, and that resources that are available to that community are not widely known, because there's no one in city government whose job it is to interface with that community and to make sure that all of the information is there, all of the resources are made available. I think the same is true for the disability community. And so I can easily and gladly say that I would create an Office of Disability Affairs, and that I would staff that with a person with a disability. So that's an easy commitment for me to make, because, as I said, my goal is to be the mayor that is the most inclusive, that has a seat at the table for every person and every community in Chattanooga. And so I want to have a transparent government, and I want to be held accountable. And I know, Jean Marie, that you are someone who will hold me accountable. So I look forward to this partnership that we're going to have, hopefully, if I am able to be Chattanooga's next mayor.
Well, Monty, I promised I would keep it somewhat short and simple. This is a topic with multiple layers that I could go on and on for hours about. It's certainly not only a passion because I live it, but it's a passion because I care so much about so many people who also live it. And I see the multiple layers of challenges that are faced across the disability community, from many different types of disabilities and different barriers that are faced. So thank you. I don't speak for the whole community, but I appreciate, I made an effort, I think, to ask questions that affect a large portion of the disability community. And I appreciate the fact that you were willing to take time and put real thought into these answers. I'd like to also thank Charity for taking her time today to translate for us in ASL, so that this information can reach as many people as possible within the city. So thank you, Monty, and thank you, Charity.
Well, I'd like to thank Charity as well. I think it's important for us to get our message out to as many people as possible. Particularly when you're in my position, wanting to be an elected official, wanting to serve the public interest, and that means all of the public, not just part of the public. So thank you, Jean Marie, for your thoughtful questions, and please reach out anytime that I can be of assistance. And as I said, I look forward to our partnership in the future.
Thank you. And I wish you all the luck as early voting continues and election day approaches.
Thank you.